Right, welcome. You'll have to put up with my growly voice. My husband was gonna be here, Tim, we do everything together usually, but he was coughing his head off, so he thought he better stay back. And I just have some sinus stuff going on, so you're not gonna get sick. Anyway, I just thought maybe we would start by, because some of you probably have never heard how rec became in Minnesota. And so I will share that story. And it happened through a tragedy. A friend of ours, we used to go on tech weekends and work at Together Encountering Christ. And that's where rec came, how the rec name came, it's Residents Encounter Christ. But anyway, so this couple that were helping out at the tech retreats, they decided they were asked to go on a work/vacation. So they took their two youngest daughters. And so they traveled to another state and they were unpacking. Their daughters were bringing in things, and then one was asked to go get paper towels because something got spilled, and she never came back. So someone had taken her. And so by the time they realized that she was no longer around, and the hotel was like, oh, you know how kids are, they always find another child and they just play, but they knew something was wrong. So you can imagine what that felt like. So all the authorities were called in that, and the moms huddled in their room in the corner, rocking, crying, screaming. The dad is beside himself, you know, all the emotions that you can imagine. Finally, they called a priest, and then they called a doctor, and they gave her a sedative, and she was able to lay down. And so, you know, lots of prayers being said. I mean, begging God, the dad, you know, was absolutely outside pacing and just begging the Lord. Anyway, they were saying the rosary. When they were done with the prayer, all of a sudden the officers were there with their daughter. So the gentleman had left her on a corner, and the police saw her and found her. And so, you know, he had raped her, and then she was 8. So you can imagine their life after this was full of anger, just absolute anger, you know, and trying to deal with this and trying to deal with their daughter. And then the other daughter felt responsible. She was 10, you know, it was just all the emotions. And so this recs were being done in Sioux Falls. Somehow they got their name. And so they would call and say, and this is probably 3 years after, you know, so some time had gone by. And so anyway, these people from Sioux Falls would call and say, we would really like to invite you to do a rec weekend, be part of our volunteers. And they're like, are you kidding me? They deserve absolutely nothing. Click. These people would call back, and the same response. They called back a third time, and so finally they just thought, okay, we're gonna do this and we'll show you that they deserve absolutely nothing. So they went and participated in this rec retreat. And from the time they entered in, moment by moment, God was working in them through the residents of forgiveness. And the powerful things that they saw, and they witnessed what happened to those men in Sioux Falls. It was a state penitentiary in Sioux Falls, dark prison. I mean, like prisons like you see on TV a lot of times.
Commonly called Up on the Hill.
And so, yeah, by the time the retreat was over, they were just, that healing process had started, and they were forgiving this man. And so, you know, they were working with their daughter once they went home, and, you know, trying to continue this forgiveness. And then they wanted to go see the man to tell him that they forgave him, but the prison would not let the father come and witness to the young man. So all of a sudden they're like, came to my husband and I and a couple other people, say, hey, why don't you go experience this rec? Because we're really involved in tech. We're directing, we're doing lots of things. And so we went, because I don't really, my personality is, I like, oh yeah, why not? I really didn't think about it. I really did not. but it's a 5-hour drive. The longer, the closer, I'm like, what in the world? Where am I going? I know nothing. So I'm standing in line to be processed in, and it's crazy. So I'd see women coming with their children to visit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, as much as I love my husband, I don't know if I could do that. I didn't know if I could bring our children to visit their dad in prison. It seemed like way too humiliating, degrading. And I'm standing in line waiting to get processed. And I'm like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? All of a sudden I'm processed in, it just went boom, boom, boom. And so we're sitting in this large group of residents who have already made rec weekend, so they become part of our team. So they're part of our team that we experience. And so I had a gentleman sit next to me, one of the residents. He said, well, so how do you like sitting next to a murderer? And so, my heart was like, ooh. I must have not reacted too bad because, he just kind of smiled. He was probably just testing me. But us women when you go to Sioux Falls, the women would be on the outside staying, and we become part of this other team, which we call the We team. And we would just come in during special times throughout the weekend, okay? And the men actually slept in the prison on the floor. I don't think they do that anymore. And so, yeah, so that in itself, and it's, when you go there, where it was done is down underground. So you don't see daylight at all. So for 3 days, 3.5 days, they did not see daylight. But every time us women came in, I was so touched and so moved. It was hard to explain, what I saw happen. And just from being in there like 5 times, in and out, we'd go there and experience a little thing, and then we'd have to leave. But I just saw God move in huge ways. And so just felt that with the men too. And so before we left and done with the retreat, we have a debriefing inside the prison underground, and everybody's just talking about how wonderful and what they saw and what they witnessed. Even the priest was like, I just knew God was there. I saw God, and so everybody was really moved. So we leave, we go out, we get in the car. I couldn't wait. Us women couldn't wait to hear more stories from the men. They were like evil. Their personality changed like this. And they're talking like trash kind of. Anyway, one of the guys realized that this was not, he just rolled down the window, and he said, everybody rolled down the window, and he demanded Satan to leave. So it's like they took all the darkness out with them. And so once that was done, the sharing and that became just, of witnessing God moving in those records. So with this other couple that had experienced a tragedy, and Tim and I, and then there was one other couple, we said they really wanted to bring it to Minnesota. So we started meeting, and planning, and we thought once we had everything together that we were going to the St. Cloud, the big place. And God was like, are you kidding me? You know nothing. You're just really green. You know nothing. And so actually Sauk Center, Juvenile Center opened up for us to go there. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot about healthy boundaries and not becoming so attached. Because that first weekend, we only had 9 boys. We're used to doing retreats for like 80 people or 100. We only had 9 boys. So I brought extra, and we were there for 3 days. I brought extra games, Christian videos, blah, blah, blah. We didn't use them. We fell in love with those boys, and of course they did us. And so when the weekend was over, they cried. We actually cried. I mean, we were like, and it sets them up for another failure because we can't be there for them. It was impossible because this is Sauk Center. We live down here. It was impossible for us to continue relationships other than we'd go back once a month for Beyond Red. But other than that, we couldn't be part of their lives, and so we learned healthy boundaries. And so once I went to a graduation for one of the kids up in Willow River. And Tim wasn't with me at that time, and so Warden Fred LaFleur was a warden at Lino Lakes. So I just went up to him and said, hey, did you ever talk with me about rec coming? And the guy in back of us said, Fred, you need to listen, you need to talk to her. So then we had a meeting with him and his few staff, and so we talked about rec, and it's complicated. This is not a really simple retreat. It's complicated because we have several different teams. And, you know, we bring in lots of stuff, like 13, 16 boxes full of things, and we just do lots. And so it's complicated. So you can see the warden, but then finally he stood up and he said, I expect you to do exactly what you said. And he walked out. And so we had to get a hold of Chaplain Dave Berg at that time. And it took me a while because it's really hard to think of adding another program to your place in the prison, you know, to making room for something else and something different. And so we met with Dave Berg, and his eyes I could see get really glossy because of all the details. And so we decided that our one team would stay on the outside and just come in on Sunday, wouldn't be there in the facility doing their part of prayer and making things. But and he said to me, Dave Berg, I'm there early to set up with another gal. We're setting things up to get it ready. And he came up to me and said, I just need you to know, this will be your first and your last retreat. It's way too hard, too complicated, and hard security wise, which it is. We bring lots of stuff. But after the weekend, he was there the whole weekend. He always was. He stayed the whole weekend, and afterwards he said, call me, because he saw the change in the men. So one of the men, Rob Maho, was on the very first weekend, and now he's part of our board. And so it's just been a really good experience. And so I think we'll do the handouts, and you can just talk a little bit about the. Sheree, I don't know, do you want one? So we're not very high class. We don't have like a thing to show you on video or anything.
So these are our information brochures on what rec is.
Right.
For those that want to volunteer or consider being part of a rec team. We've not been able to do a rec retreat for 7 years. 2018 was the last one in Lino Lakes.
Wow.
Rush City, we did one in 2020. Early 2020 before COVID, and that's been it since then. So we've done 50 retreats in Lino Lakes since 1995 when it started. 50 was the last one we did in 2018. And then in Rush City and Stillwater, we've done 4 in each, starting in 2015, 2016. And so we've not been able to go back in and do any retreats since then.
Al, can I just interject? So in that, as Al goes through it, it does say it's a Catholic retreat. It has components of our Catholic faith, but we do not go in there to convert, period. We go there to share Jesus and who we are. Okay, so just wanted you to know that.
Yeah. So the weekend on the outside where I was talking about tech is a 3-day weekend. So it's usually a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. On the inside, we had to condense that down to 2 days, where it's a full 12-hour days, Saturday and Sunday, where we actually meet with the guys. We meet with the team the Friday night before. So the inside team is what we call them, that have done a rec previously. And so we work with them and they work with us on the weekend, and they get a different perspective of the weekend. They get to serve on the weekend and be prayer warriors on the weekend. And it's all built around the Paschal mystery. First day it's the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus. So it's first day is called Die Day, where they die to themselves and the stuff in their life that's an obstacle. And then we have an opportunity for confessions, being a Catholic retreat at the end of that day. And then they come back on the Sunday, and it's called Rise Day, where they rise to new life. So they can empty themselves of all the crud. And we hear a lot of reports when they come back with smiles on their faces and just been able to have a good night's sleep. And just really experience that transformation where God has forgiven them. And now they can rise to that new life He's called them to. So that's the basics of the retreat. There's a prayer team. We have prayer warrior churches around the metro area. I think 100 some parishes that pray for that weekend to battle against the darkness that's in there. So it's an amazing retreat. I started in 1999. I did my first retreat at Lino, number 12. And then I was still raising my family and stuff, so I didn't go back till number 31, which was 2007 or 8, I think. And I've done them all since then. I've done all 20, 31 through 50 at Lino, all 4 at our city and all 4 at Stillwater. So I'm a wreckaholic in that sense, and I really do miss it. It's an amazing experience. I started at Lino Lakes doing a Christmas program. Barb kind of set up too. We'd go in on Christmas Eve and do a nativity program with these guys. And we'd fill up the chapel, singing the Christmas carols, them missing their families, and just being a part of that was just an amazing experience. And that's why I wanted to participate more. I was able to bring my wife, my son, and my daughter who did music on that retreat or on the Christmas program. And it was just a special time for us as a family to recognize that these guys are out here hurting, no families, not being with their families. And so that really touched my heart that I need to be part of this. And so I started doing the rec retreats, and I'm a coordinator over at Stillwater now. And we've been struggling to get back in there mainly because of the COVID initially and then the staffing issues. And all we're asking initially is 1 retreat a weekend. I think initially we started at doing 3 retreats a year at Lino Lakes. And then after a few years, they cut us down to only 2. We can only do 2 retreats. Faribault does a chorus, which is similar, but it doesn't have the Catholic sacraments that we do in the Archdiocese of Minneapolis-St. Paul. And you can only have 1 retreat at each facility. So Caris is in Faribault and Shakopee, and then we're in the Lino, Stillwater, in our city for our rec retreats. So, and then part of the volunteers, we asked them to go on a tech retreat. So they experience what happens on the weekend, where their hearts are touched and transformed. They go through that die process and they're rising to new life. And that's what we see when we go in on these weekends. We see these guys change, and all of a sudden they're different. And they come back on our Beyond Recs, which is once or twice a month. We go back in and meet with them. And we can see those changes, and they become part of our team and offer prayers and do testimonies. So all those things are just fruits of what happens on a weekend where these lives are transformed by the Holy Spirit, basically. On that weekend, it's the Spirit, them almost being baptized in the Spirit to recognize, God in their life. So I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I have some more
Right.
to share.
And we can respond to questions too, if you guys have questions.
So for a long time, we were just at Lino Lakes. Stillwater, Rush City wouldn't even talk to us. They were like, forget it. It was, I think John King was warden a few times in a few places. And so he was at Lino at one time, and so he had experienced kind of not personally maybe, but he had felt what Rec had done. And so he was a commissioner,
Associate or assistant.
yeah, associate commissioner. So before he left being a commissioner, the associate, he texted or emailed me and said, do you think you guys can do Rush City and Stillwater? And so I was like, oh my gosh, so I prayed that night. I was like, Lord, if this is from you, let me know. I don't want it to just be us, just human beings wanting to go do this. I want to know that this is from you. And so the readings for that on the morning, because I asked for I just wanted him to just like say. And so the readings for that day, and so on the Catholic Church, we have readings that we are given, you know, and so Catholics all around the world pray the same reading, they have the same readings. So this is the reading, and it came from the Psalm, because we always do Psalms as part of it. So it came from Psalm 102, verse 21. It said, "Attend to the groanings of the prisoner." Okay.
That was today's reading also.
And so I asked this, you know, I'm like, okay, Lord, you know, what is this coming here gonna do? You know, I always ask questions and that, and so this morning, that was the reading this morning also. So somehow we're supposed to